As the Allied bomber stream approached Berlin, the Luftwaffe climbed to intercept. The first wave of German piston-engine fighters dove into the formation, targeting the middle of the bomber column, where the defensive fire was heaviest. What followed was a chaotic, brutal dogfight, a deadly dance of tracers, smoke trails, and burning aircraft. Then came the jets. Me-262s streaked through the clouds at over 500 miles per hour. Too fast for Allied escorts to track. They slammed into bomber formations, firing devastating bursts before climbing away. Allied crews reported the jets as silver streaks, appearing and disappearing in seconds. But the Allied numbers were overwhelming. Escort fighters, P-51 Mustangs and P-47 Thunderbolts, poured into the battle. Their orders were clear: ignore the bombers, take down the jets at all costs. The skies around Berlin became a swirling mass of aircraft, explosions lighting the horizon as engines, wings, and shattered fuselages tumbled earthward. In just minutes, dozens of aircraft on both sides were destroyed. The Luftwaffe fought with stunning ferocity, but the imbalance was impossible to overcome. By the time the bombers completed their attack run and turned toward home, nearly half of the German fighters had been shot down. The Me-262s that survived had exhausted their fuel or damaged their engines and were forced to land on cratered runways under constant threat of Allied strafing. In the final months of World War II, as the German Reich collapsed on every front, the skies above Europe remained a battleground of unimaginable intensity. And nowhere was this more evident than in the skies over Berlin in March of 1945. A moment often described as the Luftwaffe's last true stand. By this point, Germany was surrounded. Soviet armies closed in from the east, Allied forces pushed from the west, and the once mighty Luftwaffe was a shadow of its former self. Years of attrition, the loss of veteran pilots, and crippling fuel shortages had nearly grounded the German Air Force. But when the Allies launched yet another massive bombing raid on Berlin, the Luftwaffe made one final attempt to defend the capital. On the morning of the attack, more than 1,200 Allied bombers and escorts surged toward Berlin. In aerial formation, so vast it stretched across miles of sky. Their targets were rail hubs, industry, and the last functioning German military facilities inside that. Waiting beneath those clouds was a desperate, outnumbered Luftwaffe force. Barely 70 fighters, many piloted by inexperienced trainees. But among them were a handful of Germany's most advanced weapons, the revolutionary Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighters. The Me-262 was the world's first operational combat jet, faster than anything the Allies could field, capable of tearing through bomber formations with its powerful cannons. On paper, it could have reversed the air war. In reality, it was too late. Fuel shortages restricted sorties. Airfields were bombed daily. Pilot training had collapsed. Still, on that morning in March 1945, the Me-262s roared into the sky one more time. Boom! The Battle of Berlin in March 1945 was the last major defensive stand of the Luftwaffe, a moment where courage and desperation collided in the skies above a collapsing nation. But this wasn't the only defining air battle of the German war. 2 years earlier, the Battle of the Ruhr had shown the world the sheer destructive power of sustained strategic bombing. In 1943, The Allies launched an unprecedented series of raids against Germany's industrial heartland. The factories, steelworks, and railways that powered the German war machine. Night after night, bombers plunged into heavily defended territory, braving radar-guided flak, searchlights, and swarms of German night fighters. The Ruhr became one of the most dangerous regions in all of Europe. Some missions saw entire bomber groups wiped out. Crews navigated through pillars of fire rising from burning cities, their aircraft pierced by shrapnel and machine gun fire. For the Luftwaffe's night fighter aces, this was a deadly proving ground. They adapted, invented new interception tactics, and inflicted devastating losses on the Allied bomber streams. Yet despite the carnage, the raids continued. German factories were smashed, production fell, communications collapsed. The Ruhr campaign proved that air power alone could cripple the bombing of Dresden. The attack remains one of the most controversial actions in military history. A firestorm so intense that it obliterated entire neighborhoods within minutes. On the night of February 13th, Allied bombers unleashed thousands of tons of incendiaries over the city. Dresden erupted into a swirling inferno. Temperatures reached over 1,500 degrees. Entire blocks were consumed in seconds. Survivors described hurricane-force winds pulling people toward the flames. German rescue teams worked for days to recover bodies, many reduced to ash. Whether it was militarily justified or not, the Dresden raid became a defining symbol of the sheer destructive power unleashed from the air in the final year of the war. But no story of the German air war is complete without the largest single day of aerial combat in human history, the Battle of Kursk, July 1943. Germany launched Operation Citadel, their final attempt to regain the initiative on the Eastern Front. As the largest tank battle in history erupted on the ground, an even larger battle unfolded overhead. More than 4,000 aircraft from the German Luftwaffe and the Soviet Air Force clashed over the Kursk salient. Dogfights erupted across the sky. IL-2 Sturmovik attack planes swept low over German armor. FW-190s and Bf-109s dove to intercept. Bombers struck tank formations, supply lines, and troop positions. The sky turned into a three-dimensional battlefield, a maze of vapor trails, machine gun bursts, spiraling debris, and parachutes drifting toward burning fields. German pilots, many of them veterans from the early war years, fought with skill and ferocity. But the Soviet Air Force had improved dramatically. Better tactics, better coordination, and sheer numerical strength overwhelmed the Luftwaffe. By the end of the battle, Germany had lost hundreds of aircraft it could never replace. Kursk marked the moment when the Luftwaffe lost air superiority on the Eastern Front, a turning point that shaped the rest of the war. Across these battles, Berlin, the Ruhr, Dresden, and Kursk, the skies over Europe became a stage for technological innovation, heroism, desperation, and unprecedented destruction. Every engagement pushed the boundaries of human endurance and reshaped what modern warfare would become. The German air war was not defined by a single battle, but by a series of clashes that revealed the power, limits, and consequences of air supremacy. From the Me-262's last stand over Berlin to the night raids of the Ruhr, from the firestorm of Dresden to the massive air duels over Kursk, each moment left a lasting imprint on history. And together, they tell the story of a conflict where the fate of nations was decided not just on the ground, but thousands of feet above it, in the vast, turbulent, unforgetting skies of World War II.